The girl was holding her shoulder and speaking because her injury was very severe. One of them spoke and said that he couldn't believe the girl still had magical energy. The team leader replied that their efforts would pay off. He reached out to uncover the girl's face. When he saw her, the leader was very surprised because he couldn't believe their target was an elf. The man spoke to his comrades and asked how much this elf could be sold for. However, before anyone could answer, Rude arrived at the scene and talked to them. He said that he initially wanted to befriend the adventurers here, but now he had changed his mind. The team members were surprised by the voice and didn't know who he was and how he could get to this place. Rude continued to speak and said that he didn't fully know their story, but he couldn't stand by and watch a group of men attack a girl. The team leader looked at Rude after hearing those words and asked who he was. Rude replied that he was a class adventurer. The elf girl was very frightened when she learned that Rude was an adventurer and shouted for him to run immediately. She understood that these people were adventure hunters. Rude was very surprised to learn this and said to himself that he had heard that these hunters were high-level adventurers. He used his exploration skills on them to see their stats and found that the leader's level was 65, but his attributes and skills were not visible at all. The same applied to the other team members. Their levels were visible, but there was no information about their attributes or skills. Rude was even more surprised and wondered if these hunters had concealment skills or some kind of anti-magic tool. At that moment, the team leader grew bored and told his subordinates to kill Rude immediately. One of the team members immediately attacked Rude with a sword. Rude was surprised and barely managed to draw his sword to parry the attack at the last moment. The hunter spoke and said that Rude's performance was quite good, but Rude knew he was only saying that because he was weak. The hunter was very angry and attacked Rude with all his might. Rude remained standing and struggled to fight back. At that moment, the other team members just stood and watched because they felt their friend was not in danger. At the same time, Rude took a deep breath to use his poisonous skill. He released green poison onto his enemy's face. The attack was so strong that it made the hunter fall to the ground and scream in pain while holding his face. The other team members were very surprised and couldn't believe that Rude could release poison from his mouth, saying that he must be like a monster. Rude approached the hunters, telling himself that their fighting style was reckless and unlike other adventurers. The team leader felt something was off and wondered if poison was one of Rude's special skills. He thought Rude couldn't be underestimated if he possessed such abilities. He then told his subordinates to attack Rude together. The subordinates immediately followed the command and quickly attacked Rude. Rude parried the first attack with his sword and stepped back to distance himself from them. At that moment, the team leader, already prepared, attacked Rude with a kick. Rude was very worried and immediately used his iron body skill. When the leader's attack hit Rude's face, it only knocked him into the swamp water. The leader realized Rude's body was extremely strong, as he had expected the attack to break his neck. Rude began to rise from the swamp after falling, but one of the hunters smiled and said he would kill Rude right then and there, moving towards him. However, in the blink of an eye, Rude dodged the attack and ran away. The hunter yelled at him to stop running, but the team leader ordered the pursuing hunter to stop immediately. He said the swamp they were in was poisonous, and if the hunter continued, he might not be able to get out again. He also understood that Rude couldn't last long in the swamp and would come out soon. Time passed, and Rude remained standing in the swamp, telling himself how long the hunters would stay there. He felt lucky because the swamp's poison kept them from approaching him, and the toxic fumes around the swamp were also affecting them. At that moment, two hunters standing in front of the swamp began to look tired, and one of them wondered how long Rude could last in the swamp. His friend replied that he couldn't last any longer because his head hurt and he felt unwell. Rude talked to himself again, seeing them in such a state, feeling it was the right time to come out, although he wished they were more affected by the poison. However, the problem was the situation would become dangerous for the injured fairy he wanted to help. Rude emerged from the swamp and asked the hunters how they felt being poisoned. One of them replied, seeing Rude come out, saying that he finally gave up. But Rude responded that, unfortunately, he was not affected by the poison at all and didn't know how much pain they were feeling right now. The team leader was furious and said to Rude that he had poison neutralization skills and had been deceiving them from the start. He then shouted at his subordinates to kill Rude immediately. One of the hunters attacked Rude right away, but Rude easily parried his attack. The hunter felt he couldn't attack anymore, and Rude said the poison had weakened their resistance. Additionally, being in the swamp also reduced their attributes. Rude noticed the second hunter was not there. The second hunter had moved behind Rude to attack him, but the attack did not affect Rude because he used his iron body skill. This surprised the hunter greatly, and not only that, but Rude also used the thundercloak skill, emitting golden lightning from his body and electrocuting the two hunters around him. Rude sheathed his sword after finishing, and we see one hunter dead while the other is still alive and very angry, continuing to insult Rude. Rude then used a new skill, Butterfly Wind Slash, and with that skill, he attacked the hunter with wind blades, successfully defeating him. The team leader sat in fear, counting Rude's skills, from poison to iron body and other skills. He shouted, asking how a human could have monster skills. Rude approached him and attacked, knowing he didn't need to answer his question. He then wounded him, realizing that he was currently stronger than anyone in the battle. He continued to attack the team leader, who finally realized he was in danger. Rude felt confident that he had done everything he could in first aid. He wondered why there was a fairy in such an area, as it was very rare. He began to wonder about the conditions the fairy had experienced that led adventurers to drive them away. At that moment, Rude and the fairy heard the sound of a monster nearby. They immediately headed toward the sound and found a giant butterfly in front of them. Rude asked for help from the butterfly leader he had met earlier while using his exploration ability. He found that the monster was at level 37 and could see all its attributes and abilities. Rude immediately attacked the monster, thinking, I won't be intimidated just because the monster is big. The butterfly used a sharp wind attack, but Rude managed to dodge it. However, the attack almost hit the fairy, making her very scared. Rude asked if the fairy was okay. After making sure the fairy was fine, Rude turned back to the monster and cursed it, saying, I will make you suffer like you did to her. He said, don't think I can't reach you just because you can fly. Rude smiled and used his sharp wind attack, managing to injure the monster. The monster was angry and spewed paralyzing fluid at Rude. However, Rude smiled, knowing he was immune to the attack. But then he remembered that the attack could hit the fairy, making him very worried. The fairy pulled out her wand and managed to deflect the fluid away from her. Then, the fairy launched a strong wind attack that brought the monster down to the ground. Rude was amazed at the fairy's wind magic and power. The situation continued like that, and finally, Rude stabbed his sword into the monster's head and successfully killed it. The fairy then spoke to Rude and asked, how can poison and paralysis not affect you? And how can your abilities resemble those of a monster? Rude proudly sheathed his sword and said, actually, I don't know how to explain it to you. But before he could continue, the fairy fell to her knees, looking very tired. Rude asked if she was affected by the paralyzing fluid, but the fairy replied that it was a different problem. She said, later, when we get out of here, I'll tell you everything. After a while, they exited the labyrinth and went into the forest. They sat under the shade of a tree. The fairy felt comfortable with the view and told Rude that the place was beautiful outside the labyrinth. Then, the fairy introduced herself as Alika, a former adventurer. Rude was surprised and said, I didn't expect you to know me. Rude said he knew Alika from the S-Class Azure team in the Kingdom of Lodia, where no one knew the appearance of the team members, but from his memory, Alika's name had been mentioned before. Alika recounted that 5 years ago, their team was defeated by a monster that merged in the depths of the S-Class labyrinth. Their leader was killed, and his body was torn in half. The second member left the mission due to severe injuries, and the third member was swallowed by the labyrinth. Alika herself didn't come out unscathed and showed a purple mark on her chest. Rude asked what the mark meant, and Alika explained that it was a curse that significantly reduced her level. Rude had never heard of such a curse before. Alika said she had tried various ways to break the curse but could only slow its progression. Adventurer hunters learned about her curse and wanted to gain wealth from it. Alika felt desperate because she would die when her level reached 0 but couldn't accept the fate of being at the mercy of those evil people. Rude then had the idea to use his substitution ability, which allowed him to receive any attack or effect from others. He asked Alika to accept his ability, and Alika agreed. Rude used his ability, and Alika's curse transferred to Rude. Alika screamed for Rude to stop because he would die cursed, but Rude asked Alika to trust him. After the curse was transferred, a monster spirit that created the curse appeared. Alika was worried, but Rude remained calm as his negation ability was activated. A golden light appeared, and the monster spirit disappeared. Rude was happy to see his ability succeed, while Alika was still confused and asked for an explanation. Rude asked Alika to check her guild card, and Alika found that her attributes were back to normal because the curse was gone. Rude explained that his ability was negation, so he thought he could help remove the curse. Alika was impressed by Rude's bravery and felt he was crazy to take such a big risk for someone he had just met. However, she thanked Rude. Time passed, and they went to an inn. They ate and drank together, Alika enjoying the good food and drink there. Rude reminded Alika not to drink too much since she had just recovered, but Alika didn't care and said she was fully healed and wanted to celebrate. They toasted, and Alika began to ask about Rude. Rude told her that their village was once attacked by monsters, and he lost his family. An S-Class adventurer saved him, which made him want to become an S-Class adventurer too to protect many people. Alika was impressed with Rude's dream and said it was beautiful. Rude was surprised and asked if Alika wouldn't laugh at him. Alika said she had also dreamed of becoming an S-Class, but all her dreams were shattered because of a curse. She had friends who were still trapped in the labyrinth, and she was determined to challenge the monster again. Alika proposed forming a team with Rude because they had the same dream. However, suddenly a man grabbed Alika's hand roughly. The man and his friend invited Alika to drink with them rudely. Rude recognized them as the people who had once kicked him out of the inn. Rude got angry and asked them to let go of Alika. Tension arose, but Alika calmed the situation by challenging them to a drinking competition. They all drank a lot, and eventually, the bullies fell asleep from too much drinking, making Alika the winner. Alika and Rude walked together, and Rude praised Alika for her performance. Alika felt grateful to Rude and said she entered the competition to defend him. When Alika almost fell, Rude used his ability to replace the effects of alcohol on Alika. Alika was impressed with Rude's ability and proposed forming a team together. As they walked, they saw the inn's specialty dish had sold out, disappointing Alika because she couldn't try it. The innkeeper heard and said that the fish dish was no longer available. This was because a monster in the fishing area had eaten all the fish there. He mentioned that he had sent a request to the guild to get rid of the monster, but unfortunately, no adventurers were available. He then offered them the task if they were up for it. Alika and Rude agreed to the task, and after some time, they went to the fishing area. There, Rude and Alika rowed a boat, mesmerized by the beauty of the place. Alika cheered Rude on, saying they had to defeat the monster to enjoy their favorite fish dish. Rude was excited and happy, but suddenly he felt a strange movement behind him. Quickly, he turned towards the sound and was suddenly attacked from underwater. He managed to dodge and smiled, telling Alika to get ready because they had found the monster the fisherman had mentioned. However, it was not that simple, as they were both surprised to find many ferocious fish around them. All the fish were ready to attack the boat. Rude used his investigative skills and found that the fish were level 23, noting their attributes and skills. One fish attacked Rude with a water strike, but Rude quickly deflected it with his sword. All the fish started attacking together. Rude realized that if they kept attacking together like that, he wouldn't be able to avoid all their strikes while on the boat. So, he immediately jumped into the water, which shocked Alika. Rude descended among the fish, lifted his head, smiled, and said he was now in the middle of them. The fish didn't wait and immediately attacked, but Rude had a plan. He used his cloak of light, dazzling all the fish around him. The light was so bright that it could be seen from outside the water. After many fish died, Rude emerged from the water. Alika called out to warn him. Rude said everything was fine but felt frustrated because some fish were still alive. The fish were alive because they gathered in the deepest part of the water. He wondered if they were at that depth for a reason or if something was protecting them down there. Rude called Alika and said he would dive deeper to investigate something. Alika was again surprised by his actions, but Rude carried out his plan. He tied a rope around his waist and started diving. As he dove, the fish avoided him, confirming that they were protecting something. When Rude focused, he found a monster surrounded by the fish. Using his investigative skills, he discovered that the monster was level 38, noting its attributes and skills. Rude thought the monster resembled a giant crab. As Rude observed the situation, one of the monster's claws detached from its body and turned into a ferocious fish. At that moment, Rude realized that the monster in front of him was responsible for producing these ferocious fish. He thought that if he didn't kill the monster, a major problem would arise because the ferocious fish would never be exhausted. He began to plan, but suddenly, before he could think further, the monster moved one of its claws and grabbed Rude tightly. Immediately after that, the ferocious fish began to move and attack him. Rude realized that the fish hadn't attacked him earlier because it was all a trap. He grabbed one of the monster's claws and used his cloak of light skill, thinking that the attack should kill the monster because of direct contact. However, a surprise occurred when the monster's claw broke off. Rude was shocked and thought the monster had just used its self-amputation skill. The monster moved and almost attacked Rude. When Rude felt in great danger, he signaled Alika to pull him with the rope. Alika saw the signal and quickly pulled him using her magic. She said that Rude didn't need to worry about anything. The monster's attack was missed because Rude had already moved away from it. The monster was very angry and continued to glare at Rude. After a while, Rude moved away from the place and emerged from the water with Alika to rest on the beach. There, Rude panted, and Alika asked if he was okay. Rude thanked her and said that without her, he might have died. He told Alika that there was a big monster at the bottom of the sea responsible for producing the ferocious fish and that the monster had fast healing skills. Therefore, they had to return quickly before the monster recovered. Alika felt unhappy and said that the monster was in its habitat in the water and her magic couldn't reach the sea floor to help him. She asked if Rude had another plan. Rude knew there was no other option but one solution and started thinking about that plan. He said to himself that since Alika had told him about her curse and formed a team with him, it would be better to tell her his secret than to make her find out on her own and lose her trust. Rude grabbed one of the ferocious fish and asked Alika not to tell anyone what he was about to show her. Alika was shocked and remained silent to see what Rude would do. Before we know what happened, we switch to a time at the sea floor where the monster is still present and see something quickly coming from above. It turned out to be Rude, using his fast swimming skills. He moved among the fish that tried to attack him and easily killed the fish he encountered. He approached the monster quickly. The monster attacked with all its claws, but Rude quickly dodged the strikes and approached the monster's main body. He stabbed his sword into the monster's body and smiled as the sword went in. He used his cloak of light skill and defeated the monster completely. Rude felt relieved because the area would now be peaceful again. He thought the problem now was that Alika saw him eat the monster after it died and wondered how she would feel and what she would do when they returned to town. Rude emerged from the water and arrived at the beach, but he didn't find Alika. He thought he had hoped too much that Alika would wait for him. However, suddenly, Alika came and said he was late and asked if he was okay, indicating that he had defeated the monster. Rude confirmed and told her he had defeated it. Alika was happy and said she had gathered some wood to make a bonfire, which would be very useful for drying their clothes. Rude was surprised by her actions and asked if she had no problem with what she saw. Alika replied that although she was surprised, in the end, Rude trusted her and told her his secret, and she had to respect that. Rude was impressed by her reaction and sheathed his sword. He thanked her, and after the situation calmed down, he pulled the monster from the water and said he wanted to take some skills from the monster. Rude was ready for that, cutting the monster into small pieces to eat. He also took other fish and told Alika that he thought it wasn't fair for him to eat the monster alone, so he brought fish for her. Alika was happy because the fish was what she wanted, and she said she would eat it now. Rude smiled at her and said they should eat first and he would tell her about the first time he ate a monster. That night passed with Rude preparing the food while Alika ate the fish and said it was very delicious. She said that eating a monster was strange and asked why Rude did it. Rude replied that the reason he did it was that it helped him get closer to his dream, even though he was just an rank adventurer. Alika smiled at him and said he was a good person because he used his power to save her. She asked if the monster was really tasty when cooked. With the food in front of them, it was clear that it tasted very good. Rude added that he was surprised to find out that the monster had a delicious taste. Rude was full and told Alika that he was no longer hungry. He offered Alika a bite of the monster he had eaten. Alika refused, knowing she didn't have the same protection as Rude and that the effects of eating a monster would quickly affect her. After that, Alika asked again if Rude truly wanted to join her team. She inquired about any additional requirements that needed to be fulfilled. The officer checked Rude's documents and noted that he had achieved many remarkable feats. However, the only thing missing was battle registration. Upon hearing this, Alika told the officer they wanted to take on a mission together. The officer asked them to wait for a moment to get the mission. Sure enough, after a while, they went to a place near the city and learned that their mission was to exterminate a pack of gray wolves. These wolves were level 1, but their skills and attributes were quite good. Rude suddenly appeared at the location and used his spider stealth skill to approach the pack unnoticed. Quickly, Rude attacked and managed to kill one of the wolves. Another wolf saw what happened and howled loudly to warn the pack of the enemy. The pack heard the howl and immediately chased after Rude. Rude started to run from the pack and asked Alika to step in. Alika quickly summoned a small spirit named Sylvain and requested her power. Rude observed this and realized it was Alika's special skill, spirit magic. Once Sylvain appeared, Alika's magic energy increased significantly. At that moment, the wolves changed their direction and attacked Alika. However, Alika used wind magic, unleashing sharp winds that cut through all the wolves in their path. Rude was amazed by Alika's incredible power and thought no one in the world could withstand such an attack. Alika then mentioned that her power hadn't fully recovered after a curse she suffered. Rude became even more anxious, imagining how powerful Alika would be at full strength. Just then, Rude sensed something approaching from behind. More wolves were coming, and one of them leaped to attack Rude. Rude was distressed, unaware of the many hidden wolves. In this critical situation, Alika shouted for Sylvain, causing Rude to vanish from the spot. The wolves were confused, searching for Rude and Alika but couldn't find them. One of the wolves looked up and was shocked to see Rude flying, thanks to Alika's help. Rude was happy and thanked Alika for saving him. Alika reminded Rude to thank Sylvain, as she was the one who saved him. Alika also warned Rude to stay vigilant as she saw 5 wolves watching them from the forest, indicating many more were hiding. Rude listened to Alika and said it was his turn now. Rude used his true perception skill to see all the hidden wolves, numbering around 30. He smiled and said they just needed to kill those wolves to complete the mission. Rude shouted to Alika to attack the spot he pointed out. The wolves started to run in fear due to the sudden quick attack. Alika attacked them but didn't hit any. Rude did this on purpose because his true perception skill lost accuracy in open areas, making it hard for Alika to attack from the air. He planned to attack from the side, gathering all the wolves in one place. Alika informed Rude she was done, and Rude told her to leave the rest to him. Rude appeared behind the wolves and used paralyzing breath, emitting a green smoke that made all the wolves pass out. Afterward, they discovered they had defeated 52 wolves. Alika was shocked and said she couldn't believe they faced that many. Rude said it wasn't difficult and asked if Sylvain was her spirit. Alika replied yes, explaining that she could use the power of spirits in nature. Alika could create powerful magic with little magical energy and do amazing things like flying. Rude was amazed and said it was the first time he realized how powerful wind magic could be. Sylvain appeared and pulled Rude's hair, causing him pain and making him scream. Alika laughed and said Sylvain liked to joke around. Alika noticed it was getting dark and said they needed to leave quickly. Sylvain granted Rude the ability to fly, and they started heading back. Rude was delighted and played around in the air, saying it was the best feeling in the world. He asked Alika about other types of magic she could use besides wind. Alika explained that she was also skilled in water, ice, light, and earth magic, but not very good with dark and fire spirits. As they flew, Rude saw smoke in the distance. Alika said there should be a village there. They saw the burning village and a terrifyingly large monster. The villagers were running in fear, and the adventurers there were also confused since there should have been no monsters other than gray wolves in the area. They became more anxious upon seeing the monster Baphomet. Baphomet attacked with a fire spear, but the adventurers were saved by Rude's water magic using spirit assistance. Baphomet was angry at Rude's interference, and Alika came to help the adventurers. Alika told the adventurers not to worry because she and Rude would handle the monster. Rude used his exploration skills to get information about Baphomet, finding it was level 27. Rude realized that Baphomet was much stronger than ordinary monsters. Baphomet attacked with 4 fire spears, and Rude dodged them. Rude approached Baphomet to try and drain its magic power, but Baphomet wouldn't allow it. Rude was surprised by this unexpected resistance. Baphomet attacked again with earth magic, but Rude survived thanks to Alika's wind magic. Alika helped Rude by using water magic to clear a path. Rude finally managed to get close to Baphomet and cut off its finger. Baphomet became enraged and attacked again, but Alika assisted with fire magic. Rude and Alika worked well together, and eventually they defeated Baphomet. The villagers watched from a distance, shocked by their victory. Alika told Rude they succeeded because of their good teamwork and reminded him to stay alert. Rude thanked Alika for her help, and they returned to the village, feeling satisfied after defeating the giant monster. "Is he okay or hurt?" he asked. He replied that he was fine and that the vampire had been defeated, saying he had struck a deadly blow. However, if the vampire survived, he might attack the village again. But he reassured them that his team was there. Then he asked if he could request assistance. The adventurer replied that as long as it was something he could do, he wouldn't hesitate. Then he laughed and said he just wanted a bit of food because he was very hungry. Time passed, and we saw him cooking monster meat. At that moment, Alika returned and told him she was back. He welcomed her back and asked about the people in the village. Alika assured him that everyone there was fine, thanks to the adventurers who helped with the evacuation. Then she said she told them they would drive away Baphomet so no villagers would question the missing monster's body. Rude listened to her words and became very excited when he saw the food. He said it looked delicious. At that moment, the Baphomet soup was ready, and as usual, he added some spices and immediately tasted it. He told Alika that it had a goat aroma but tasted very good. When Rude ate Baphomet's meat, he gained basic fire and earth magic skills, along with other abilities. Alika watched Rude and said that seeing him eat like that made her feel the food was delicious. But she also explained that watching a human eat monster meat was unsettling. Rude stopped eating and realized she was right. He felt that getting used to eating monsters was frightening. After some time, a monster appeared in the forest, a level 22 boar with a quick step skill. Rude was surprised and said the monster was very small. He then stood up and tried to use his magic by waving his hand, but nothing happened. Alika called out to Rude, and he tried again, but still nothing. Suddenly, one of the monsters used the quick step skill, activating when it ran straight for a certain distance. Rude was very worried about what would happen, so he and Alika immediately jumped and managed to avoid the boar's attack. However, the problem was that the boar had knocked Rude's food to the ground. At that moment, Alika was talking to Rude and said that she thought he could already use magic. However, she informed Rude that her magical power was now depleted and she wouldn't be able to support him. Rude was still angry about the spilled food and didn't respond to Alika. He told the monsters that he would never abandon them because he was very tired of gathering all that food. He became even angrier and said that he would blame those pigs and would eat all their meat. Then he ran toward them in full rage, but suddenly Alika grabbed Rude's clothes and tried to calm him down. She told Rude that the quick step ability would make the pigs gather great energy and their attacks would be very effective. She also told Rude that even though their chances of getting hit would be small now, they didn't want to get hurt. Alika continued and told Rude that now they had no choice but to retreat. Sure enough, they both ran very fast and the pigs kept chasing them to catch them. After some time, they managed to hide in a tree and escape from the pigs. When the situation had calmed down, Alika spoke to Rude and asked about his inactive magical energy. Rude replied that this was the first time in his life he couldn't use the abilities he had acquired. Alika listened to his words and suggested that he use his exploration ability to see his magical capabilities. Rude liked the idea, and when he did it, he found that fire and stone magic were still within him, and he also discovered information on how to use them instinctively. Alika also saw this and then said that his inability to use magic was most likely due to his mind not being able to believe that he could use magic. However, after some thought, Alika realized that Rude could use fire magic, albeit in a simple way, and this indicated that the previous analysis might be wrong. Suddenly, Alika got another idea and thought that Rude should use magic like the monsters to get out of this situation. Alika told Rude that he needed to learn how to control mana first. Rude listened to her words and understood that now he had to forget about magic and focus on mana as Alika said. But when he asked how to do it, Alika replied that she didn't have any information about what mana was. Rude prepared himself, extended his hand, and decided to try again. Then, he began to remember the first time he ate a mentor and his body started to fully recover. He also remembered the great energy explosion that happened in his body and told himself that if he could release such energy from his body, he would be able to use magic. Rude focused more and felt a strange energy within him. Meanwhile, Alika watched Rude with awe at the progress he was making. Then Rude slowly began to open his eyes and suddenly opened them very quickly because he realized that he had created a magic circle. This made him very happy and he understood that as long as he could feel mana, he could use that power easily. Excitedly, Rude raised his hand and threw a fire spear at the pigs. As a result, there was a great explosion and all the pigs died.